Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you're getting some good reading in. And are you ready for the weekend? Because I sure know I am. Today's video is all about wrapping up September's reading. Now I've already done the first 5 books and wrap up part 1, and now it's time to tell you about the second 5 books that I read this month. And to be honest, the first one that I'm going to tell you about, I've talked about a bit on my channel, but I'm having a hard time figuring out my thoughts. So I apologize if it's a little bit jumbled, but the first book I'm going to tell you about is Ohio by Stephen Markley. Now this is a debut novel that came out, I want to say in August, so it's been out a couple of months now. And it was also one of the big buzz books from Book Expo America. So I had a lot of expectations going into it. And I really, really enjoyed it. If you like a book that just has sort of an epic sort of nature, which focuses on a certain area of town and a certain group of friends and everything that's happened to them, you're going to really like this book. Now, this book is set in a little tiny town called New Canaan in northeastern Ohio in the Rust Belt. And it sort of centers around this group of 4 friends and their friend group from high school basically on. Now, they do flashback even further back, and most of the high school stuff is done in flashback. Most of the book happens after the Iraqi war. So you're in Ohio in that time period. That's where sort of the present day is set. And then there's a lot of flashbacks to all sorts of time periods before that. The 4 guys are just these 4 guys that met in high school, and you find out very soon at the beginning that they've all had 4 very different fates. And I don't want to say too much about what happens to them, but the very first section, sort of the prologue, you've learned that one of them died as a soldier in Afghanistan, and the book starts with his funeral parade down Main Street in their little town. And sort of the issues with getting that parade started set a tone for this book. You learned that a lot of these people didn't go where they wanted to go. They all sort of carry a sort of baggage from this small town in Ohio. There's a lot of people dealing with drugs addiction. And we have 4 separate narrators that tell the story. And what is fantastic is, as they tell the story, it not only combines the present, but it also combines the past. The first storyteller in the story is Rick Brinklin, and he is one of those 4 guys. And that is the only narrator I'm going to tell you about, because I didn't have this copy. I read this as an advanced reader's copy, so I didn't have the blurb. So I didn't know who the 4 narrators were going to be. I recommend not finding out, because every section where I learned the narrator opened my eyes to another complexity to the novel. It's got a propulsive plot, as in there is sort of a story that's going on. There's, in the very first beginning, Rick is coming to deliver a package. You want to know what that package is. And then as that part takes place, and as you're learning and meeting other characters from his past and his present, you want to kind of figure out how it's all going to go together. And that is done very, very well. I was on the edge of my seat. I found all of the characters and narrators really compelling, and the story really, really on point. Now, if I had to say there was one thing about this book, and I read a review that really articulated this for me, is there's a lot of pontification that goes on by some of the characters, not only main characters, but periphery characters, about war, about politics, about Obama, about fighting in the war, choosing to be a soldier, fighting against the war that occurred in Iraq. And sometimes it stopped the narrative, and it would get off sort of, I don't want to say soapboxy, but it kind of had that feel where we were getting. But the good thing is, I think, that a number of different perspectives are given, but it sort of interrupted the overall narrative arc and sort of the characters. And the characters and the story are so good. Highly recommend Ohio. If you like books where you sort of get lost in a group of friends and things don't always go well, but sometimes they do, and you kind of start to see how everything interchanges, and you just like that sort of puzzle coming together, I highly recommend Ohio by Stephen Markley. I really liked it. It is fighting for one of the best books that I've read this year. So there you go. The next book I read arguably may be my favorite book of the year, because arguably the author may become one of my top 3 favorite authors, because I've read both novels by her, and both novels have been freaking fantastic. And that's Normal People by Sally Rooney. Now, this book comes out in April in the US, but it is out now. It was longlisted for the Booker Prize, and my heart breaks that it was not shortlisted, because I find it to be flippin' brilliant. This is the story of Connell and Marianne. They are high school compatriots. I'm not going to say sweethearts, because that's not right. Basically, the start of the book, you learn that his mom cleans for Marianne's family. They are both very good students in their school. She is sort of thought as the odd one. She doesn't have very many friends. He is popular. He plays soccer or football, and he has sort of a crowd that goes with him. And they start a relationship in high school, a sexual, intimate relationship, and I want to say an intimate, emotional relationship as well, that he desires to keep hidden. And that sets the tone for their relationship, and that is what the book follows. They both go to the same university, he to him to focus in English, and for her in sort of, I want to say she's in government or political science or something like that. Not really relevant to their overall arc, but sort of the novel is how their lives interchange and go in and out, how they become different people. We learn how they develop. This book will not be for everyone. It definitely has some dark aspects to it. Marianne is a very, very unique woman, and she can sometimes be a little bit off-putting. Colin is I don't want to say more straightforward, but he definitely has a more general perspective on the world, a more sort of, I don't want to use the word normal, but Normal People is in the title. He is definitely the more sort of grounded, but he also comes off a bit whiny to me, which can be off-putting at times. But to me, it's so brilliant what she does with both of them as a juxtaposition of how two different people interchanged, how their life experiences make them who they are, and their desire for intimacy, their desire for relationships. Sally Rooney is hands down one of the best writers I have read in recent years. I think her prose is phenomenal. I think her story plotting is fantastic. This is a book that does not have a lot of plot, but really is about the people and their relationship, and that's your plot. I couldn't put it down. I think it was 5 stars across the board, and yeah, I think it's brilliant. So again, that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. Hands down, one of my favorite books of the year. Maybe my favorite book of all time. There you go. That's a big statement. The next book I read was one of the books from the long list of the National Book Award, which I am going through that entire 10-book long list. I have 2 left to go, but I read The Friend by Sigrid Nunez. Now, the way that this book is blurbed is this is about a woman whose friend has committed suicide, and she becomes owner of his Great Dane dog, who is also mourning his loss. And this book is really about her dealing with loss and of her friend, and also with the dog's loss. Now, the dog is not as prominent in this book as that leads you to believe. So all I'm going to say is, if you're reading this as a dog story, that's not what this book is about. This is a very philosophical, this is a very meta book. You're really in a woman's mind as she deals with the loss of her best friend, and also how to deal with everything in her life that reminds her of that person. There's a lot of references to literature, a lot of discussion around literature in this. The main character, who is writing almost in a journalistic format, journalistic, not journalistic. So it's like a journal to the man who has committed suicide. There's some stuff that will very much surprise you. At the end of the book, I went, oh, really? And it really put me sort of in a 360, made me rethink everything that I've read. this book will not be for everyone. There is nothing that drives the plot going forward. You have to be really willing to just be in this woman's mind as she deals with loss and depression. And from all different angles and all different ways of looking at it, I really enjoyed this book. But this book is going to be, to steal a British term, be very Marmite. It's either going to be a book you love or a book that you're frustrated by because there's not much going on. I think the description of the dog and when it is brought up and its loss and how she goes into her investigation into its sadness about the loss of his master, which I hate the word master, but it plays in this. There was clearly, and then her relationship with the dog as they sort of develop is really well done. I loved it, but this was very much a me book. So I highly recommend it. If you like recommendations from me about books with very little plot, but more about ideas and character and thinking, this is a book I highly recommend. And that's The Friend by Sigrid Nunez. I really loved it. For a total change of pace, I picked up the second volume in the My Brother's Husband manga series by Gengoroh Tagame, and I'm saying that wrong. This is translated from the Japanese, I want to say. Was it translated? I think it's translated from the Japanese. It was originally published in Japanese. Let's see. Translated from the Japanese by Anne Ishii. And this is out by Pantheon. Now, this is the story of basically this gentleman. I'm horrible with names, so I apologize. Yachi and his daughter Kana and Mike. Now, Yachi's brother was married to Mike in Canada and has died. We learned that in the first volume. Shows up on the doorstep and becomes part of their family in an attempt to learn about his husband who he has lost. This book is positive and loving and deals with the internalized fear of homosexuality within the Japanese culture in such a positive and loving way. The little girl is adorable. She falls for Mike as just this, he's her uncle and he's part of the family. And it really makes our main character, Yachi, really self-reflect on what could happen in his life, what he lost when he lost his brother. It is really just endearing and touching. The art is fantastic. And it deals with a lot of tough topics in a very wonderful way. So, highly recommend Volume 1, highly recommend Volume 2. That's My Brother's Husband by Gengoroh Tagame. My Japanese is awful. Translated from the Japanese by Anne Ishii. And yeah, totally worth the pickup, guys. Last but not least is a book I'm not going to talk about too much because it was my book club book for my debut novels you may have missed, and that is Standard Deviation by Katherine Heiny. Please check out my last video. I do a whole review of it and discussion. First 10 minutes are spoiler-free. Second 10 minutes are spoilered. This is the story of Graham, Audra, and their young son who is on the spectrum, Matthew. This is about infidelity. Infidelity in so many ways. Graham married Audra after cheating on his wife, Elspeth, with her. And then he becomes friends again with Elspeth in the book. It deals with infidelity at the friend level. It has so much to say. What I will say, the most loving portrait of two parents with a son with Asperger's, and the sort of way that they deal with that day in and day out. And it is beautifully written. Graham loves his son. Audra loves her son. Audra is a unique, funny character. There's a lot of humor. There's just a lot of really good stuff in this book. As I said in my review, I think the only thing is there's a couple of instances of infidelity that are just maybe shoved in there that weren't needed. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. I highly would recommend it. I'd give it to a lot of people. I don't read a lot of stuff with a sense of humor, so it was good for me. And yeah, no, I really liked it, and I will be picking up whatever Katherine Heiny does moving forward. So that's Standard Deviation by Katherine Heiny. And I hope you guys like some of these books. Did you read any of them? Have any of them made it onto your TBR? Let's talk in the comments below. As always, if you are a return subscriber, thank you so much. You're what I do this for. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope you liked what you saw. And until next time, happy reading, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!